It's been a while since I last talked about my Jehovah's Witness mother, about 2 years. But the other day, I was sitting at my computer working and I got a phone call from her. The very last phone number I expected to show up. Let's talk about what happened next. As most of you know, I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness. My mom is a current Jehovah's Witness, and as such, has been shunning me for about 12 years, since I was 18 when I left the religion. Off and on over the years, she'll decide that she does want to talk to me. We'll talk for a day or two, and then she'll come to the conclusion that she can't talk to me anymore because it's wrong. Well, I was sitting at my computer working the other day, and the next thing I know, my phone rings. It's her number. It's been 2 years since my last interaction with her, so it was pretty unexpected. I answer the phone, and she just starts talking to me like everything's normal, talking about whatever. Says she wants to come to West Virginia to visit my daughter for a week. Now, I've never tried to prevent them from having a relationship, and that worked against me in the beginning. She got Kylie to the point where she was actually interested in getting baptized when she was 7 or 8. I had to take steps to deprogram Kylie after that. Now she realizes that it's a cult, and she knows what a cult is and how it differs from a standard religious group. So I don't worry about my mom brainwashing Kylie again. Even so, I still get a lot of backlash from people for letting my mom have a relationship with Kylie. I just didn't want to be the one ending relationships. As long as Kylie's mentally safe, which she is, I don't want to be the one to stop communication. I want it to be perfectly clear who's ending the relationships. So I said, fine, you can come here and hang out with Kylie for a week. That's okay with me. The next day, I get another phone call from my mom. She talked to me for 2 hours. It was largely pointless stuff, like collecting. My grandfather loves collecting old watches. He has some really valuable ones. My grandmother has a really valuable American Girl doll collection. So I talked about my retro game collection. We veered off into religious territory a little bit, and I said, I have no intentions of harassing you about religion. If you're talking to a disfellowshipped person, you're supposed to avoid religious subjects. That's 100% fine with me. I have no issue with that. We can keep Jesus out of it completely. Although, despite that fact, she did talk about it with me a little bit. She talked about her reasons for believing in the religion. I asked her why she believes it. She says, because of all the prophecies being fulfilled right now. I said, hypothetically speaking, I'm not saying this is the case, but if you didn't have evidence that it was true, would you still believe it? She said no. I was pretty interested by that answer. I asked her what evidence she had. She basically gave me the 1914 teaching as evidence. The Bible math Jehovah's Witnesses used to figure out that 1914 is the year that Jesus came back to earth. I kind of poked some holes in it a little bit, but largely left it alone. Then I asked her what was going to happen as the end gets closer. She said, the world is going to ban religion everywhere. I said, that's never going to happen. She said, just wait and see. I said, okay, I'll tell you what. When the world bans religion everywhere, the US, Canada, South America, Africa, European countries, everywhere, I'll believe it. I mentioned the fact that talking to a disfellowshipped family member isn't a disfellowshipping offense. She said, show me where. So I told her I'd give her screenshots of where it says that in the books. Then the conversation turned to lighter subjects. We actually talked for about 2.5 hours. Eventually, we hung up on good terms. I don't know when you're watching this video, but the next events happened about 30 minutes ago as I'm writing this script. There might be more of the story to tell. If so, I'll put it on Twitter so you can keep a lookout there. Check the description for a link. I told her I'd send screenshots of the Watchtower Society's position on talking to a disfellowshipped family member, so I sent some to her. Here's what I said. The other day, you asked about how you're supposed to treat disfellowshipped family members. You asked for citations. This is the April 15th Watchtower, 1988. Quote, cutting off from the Christian congregation does not involve immediate death, so family ties continue. Thus, a man who is disfellowshipped or who disassociates himself may still live at home with his Christian wife and faithful children. Respect for God's judgments and the congregation's action will move the wife and children to recognize that by his course, he altered the spiritual bond that existed between them. Yet, since his being disfellowshipped does not end their blood ties or marriage relationship, normal family affections and dealings can continue. Then I said, this is from the July 2009 Watchtower, page 28 and 29. Although the Bible makes a clear distinction between true and false teachings, God allows each person the freedom to choose how he or she will respond. No one should be forced to worship in a way that he finds to be unacceptable or be made to choose between his beliefs and his family. Does study of the Bible lead to family breakup? No. In fact, the Bible encourages a husband and wife who practice different religions to remain together as a family. Then I said, this is from the Elder's Handbook, 2012, under the section Disfellowshipping Offenses. It lists association with disfellowshipped non-relatives but does not list association with disfellowshipped relatives. Actually, this one's pretty risky. Jehovah's Witnesses aren't supposed to see this book. They know it exists, but reading it is strictly forbidden, unless you're an elder. Elders aren't even supposed to send it off to get spiral bound. They can have it spiral bound if they're in the room while it happens. They know the person personally, they know they're a strong Jehovah's Witness, and they can verify that they aren't reading the pages. They're instructed to never leave the book lying around, or leave a bag containing the book lying around. They take it entirely too seriously. So I sent her a quote from that book. It's a pretty big deal. Anyways, here's what it says. It's under the Reasons for Disfellowshipping People section. Quote, "Though this is not an exhaustive list, brazen conduct may be involved in the following if the wrongdoer has an insolent, contemptuous attitude made evident by a practice of this: willful, continued unnecessary association with disfellowshipped non-relatives despite repeated counsel." And finally, I sent her one last article. I said, "And here's the 1947 Awake explaining that excommunication is a pagan practice." This article, the 1947 Awake article, produced by Jehovah's Witnesses, is pretty much considered apostate material now. You would be heavily questioned if the elders caught you with this, and it might even lead to being disfellowshipped, depending on how you answered those questions. The article is pretty long, but it basically talks about how the Catholic Church practices excommunication and how it's a pagan practice. It talks about how wrong shunning is. It's a very fascinating article. Shortly after that released, they changed their policy on it, stopped caring about the supposed pagan roots, and implemented it as just another control tactic on their members. Then declared this Awake magazine apostate material and told their members to burn any old literature they have lying around. Anyway, she responded to those 4 screenshots with, "I'm at the meeting, I'll read it later." I said, "Oh, sorry, forgot." A little later, I got a response from her. She said, "How can you not know that Jehovah is drawing you? Jehovah is still in your heart. I've struggled terribly with not having you in my life, crying with tears and strong outcries with my hands around my throat. That has to be reminiscent of a certain choking incident. Looking up to Jehovah and begging and pleading loudly with great anguish, asking him, please, please, bring back my boy. I am only a human being, greatly imperfect. I can only go by what I read in the Bible as a certainty. Other sources of information are helpful and give me guidance, but one source of certainty is the Bible. Read in the God's Love book in the appendix at the back under how to treat a disfellowshipped person. The scriptures referenced are very clear. The situation is different if the disfellowshipped person is living at home, like with a husband or a minor. I have missed you horrifyingly terribly. There is only one way to rectify it. I have done my best. I am imperfect." I said, "Are you saying that you're going to continue shunning me, or are we still on the continue to talk but not about Jesus thing?" She said, "I'm not shunning you. I'm trying to stay strong to Jehovah the best that I can. Come back and fix it." I said, "I would never be part of a high control religion. If Jehovah wanted me to know that he was real, he could easily alert everybody instantly across the earth by audibly speaking to us in our minds. If there's a fear that the sound of his voice might deafen us, then he could use a pitch changer. They're cheap at Walmart. That would be more than enough proof for me. Next, he would need to make sure that the organization representing him wasn't doing it in an unethical way, via high control methods similar to Scientology or Mormonism. If he could manage that, which I don't know why he couldn't since he's God, then I would consider following him. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying that you aren't going to be talking to me from here on? I remember what happened a couple of years ago now. You came to me and said you were going to talk to me, and the next day you retracted that, thus sending me on an emotional roller coaster. I told you I wasn't going to get on the roller coaster anymore. Either be in my life or don't, and I stand by that now. Be in my life or don't. I was hurt by what you did back then, but every time you do this, it affects me less and less. I'd love for you to know my girlfriend and be a part of my life, so do it. But I don't want to hear you say you're going to, because obviously I can't take you at your word anymore. I just want you to do it. Getting my hopes up and then smashing them to pieces is abusive, whether it's intended to be or not. One of these times you text, I'm not going to bother answering you anymore. I know you're in a high control religion, so I'm hard pressed to blame you for your bad behavior. But that doesn't mean that what you're doing is any less psychologically damaging. She responded, here you go again. Do you think you're the only one who feels pain? You think you don't hurt me by telling me all these spiritual things you're doing, giving me hope, and then slamming me again? There's only one way to fix it. I'm not the problem. Quit trying to corner me. You left our way of life willfully, knowing that when you left Jehovah, you left me. You did it, not me. You left me. Forget it. I responded, I'm just gonna reiterate. Be in my life or don't. Don't tell me you're going to, only to pull the rug out from under me. It's emotionally abusive. I don't care what reasons you have for doing it or whatever else. Do it or don't do it. Notice what she's doing here. She's blaming the whole thing on me. I have the door open. I've had the door open the whole time. If she wants to have a relationship with me, then she's more than welcome to. I haven't said no. I haven't told her not to text me. I haven't told her not to come visit. If anything, I've encouraged it. But she says I'm not the problem. You left our way of life. You did it, not me. There's only one way to fix it. The one way to fix it that she's talking about is for me to come to meetings and get reinstated. That's the only way to reestablish a relationship in her eyes. And she's blaming me for not doing it, saying that the fact that we don't have a relationship is my fault. That's kind of how Jehovah's Witnesses view the situation. That's how they frame it. They probably frame it that way to try to lessen the burden on themselves. Like they know what's happening is wrong, so they're going to do their best to blame it on the people around them instead of on themselves. So that's where it sits as of now. She's shunning me again. In the texts, she said holding her throat and crying, reminiscent of another choking incident. That was because when I was little, my dad had a tendency to lose control and hold me against a wall by my neck. He did the same thing to my mom. One time she got between us and he pushed her onto the floor and ran after me anyways. Abused by my dad when I was little, abused by my mom as an adult. That's the end result of a high control religion like this. When I talked to her on the phone the other day, she was telling me about the types of things my dad would do to her before they joined the religion. She said, I would make mashed potatoes and he would look at them and say, that's not how you make mashed potatoes. He would tell me the correct way to make them. So the next week, I'd make them the way he explained and he'd do it again. He'd say, you did it wrong again. And then he would tell me how they're made, which is exactly how I made them the first time. That's gaslighting. That's the very definition of gaslighting. And when somebody is gaslit like that, they reach out to find something solid, something to ground them in reality, something incontrovertibly real. She said, I found Jehovah's Witnesses. They grounded me in reality. I said, so now you've built your entire identity off of this group and their beliefs. If it turned out to not be true, then you would feel like your entire life was a lie, start to finish. It has to be true. She said, yep, that's right. I said, you see why that's unhealthy, right? She said, it's only unhealthy if it's not true. I hold out absolutely no hope of having a relationship with her again. Although I'm pretty sure I can expect her to pull this again. I suspect she'll probably send me a text in another year or two telling me she wants to have a relationship with me and she's sorry we've had so many problems and all that. And then the next day, she'll come to the conclusion that it's wrong and that I'm evil and she can't have any association with me because it's against Jehovah's will. That's just how it's gonna be. At least until the day she texts me and I decide not to answer. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. If you like what I do and you want to make sure I can continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, you can support me on Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring. I sell all kinds of shirts and stickers and stuff on there. Second, you can support me by checking out my Etsy store. I sell 3D printed stands for every system, from the original Nintendo to the Xbox One. And finally, if you want to support me in other ways, you can check me out on my other channels. I have the podcast channel, which is where I talk about whatever's on my mind. Politics, social issues, whatever. You can also find it everywhere podcasts can be found. Or you can check out the videos on my main channel where I focus on destructive cults. As it is with most channels these days, I rely on the support of viewers like you to keep my channel alive, so sharing my work is extremely helpful. Anyways, check me out in all those places if you haven't already. Thanks for listening, guys.